as a gentleman that has been the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Vision Group. And of course, from his formative years as a classroom teacher, and now through the newsroom and into the boardroom, Mr. Wanyama's journey has been one of purpose, it has been one of precision, and of course, his profound and strategic insight is what has, of course, led him here. Now, we have been very strategic and keen to have him on board because what he brings to the stage is not only the credibility of a seasoned journalist, but also a communications expert, but also the momentum of a corporate leader that is transforming one of Uganda's largest multimedia companies. Now, why did we invite Don Wanyama today? We invited him because in an era where the future of work is being redefined, we thought, and of course in an era where we have digital disruption, and where of course we have AI-driven workflows, we thought Mr. Don Wanyama stands at the intersection of media evolution, corporate revolution, human-centered leadership, and of course he's one that is adapting a legacy blueprint that can enable us have innovation and navigate a workplace that can transform us and make us better people. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me wholeheartedly in welcoming Don Wanyama, a leader that has transformed our society and made us a better universe. Let us welcome Don Wanyama. You're most welcome. Over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say I'm going to disappoint you because I'm not going to talk about anything that the MC has spoken about. No one gave me that advisory on the topics he's just spoken about. So sorry, I will not say anything about corporate race and artificial intelligence. Clinton, I'm sorry. To the organizers of this fair, Brighter Monday, together with your partner, MasterCard, to the management of Islamic University in Uganda that graciously received me here this afternoon, the exhibitors, the different teams that have engaged here on very critical subjects around careers, jobs, and basically the changing landscape. And of course to you, the beloved students of this university, allow me to say, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to offer a keynote address at this very critical platform where Brighter Monday, an agency that strives to help young people prepare for the job market, together with other exhibitors and prospective employers, have dedicated time and resources to this very noble cause. It is actually more sentimental for me because I'm giving this talk just a few kilometers from my rural home in a village called Namabasa. I have spoken at many fora, but I had never had the opportunity to speak to young people close to home like today. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that I'm going to speak from my heart because I'm speaking close to home. Away from what Clinton has said, when I was invited to come and make this keynote address, I was told that the theme of this fair is bridging dreams and opportunities. And while I was reflecting about this theme, I could not think of a better experience to share with you, the young people of IUIU, except my own life experience. This theme supposes that all of you who are here present, you have dreams. I guess we all have dreams, don't we? And therefore the puzzle that we seek to address today is how do we get those dreams to align with opportunities. The MC has graciously introduced me. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Vision Group. The Vision Group is the biggest and most influential media house in Uganda. We publish 2 newspapers, the New Vision and Bukede. We run 7 radio stations. We operate 4 television stations. We do courier business, so we take packages across the country. We have digital billboards in strategic parts of Kampala and some of the upcountry cities. We run a publishing house, so we do textbooks. We manage events, and we operate perhaps the biggest commercial printing factory in Uganda. The company that I lead employs more than 1,000 people, and we are among Uganda's top tax-paying agencies. You were told that my journey began from the classroom as a teacher. Yes, I'm actually a teacher, and I'm a journalist. The question that many of you might be wondering is, how did this young man from Namabasa get to where he is? How did his dreams meet opportunity? And this is where I want to share my life story with you. My mother will be turning 77 years this December. She's a retired secondary school teacher of English language and literature in English. It therefore happened that growing up, I was exposed to a lot of literature texts around our house and materials by virtue of my mother's profession. So naturally, I picked interest in books and newspapers. It was common that when my mom sent me to the market, if there was any change left, I would rush and buy a newspaper. Many times I was fascinated by the headlines. That curiosity of the news also drove me into becoming a fan of radio broadcasts. I listened a lot to BBC's Focus on Africa program. I would sit by the radio in the evening, waiting for the baritone of a famous presenter then called Robin White, who was later replaced by a guy called Chris Pickerton. Remember, these were the dramatic 90s. Governments were collapsing across Africa. Rebellions in West Africa were overthrowing presidents in Central Africa. HIV was such a menace in the 90s. Countries like Uganda were undergoing what was known as the structural adjustment programs. Civil servants were losing jobs. Africa was a dramatic place. And so we were never short of news then. All these things combined to give me a clarity of mind when I was growing up that I wanted to become a journalist. My dream was clear. But then the question was, how was I to actualize this dream? I therefore decided that even before I became a professional journalist, I was going to be or pretend to be one. So while in secondary school, I made it a point to be a member of the journalism or writers clubs in Namali High School, in Jinja College, and a school across here called Mbale College. A lot of my high school hobbies and OGs actually only remember me today because I was the guy who was always publishing the news. And what we called magazines then were actually just pieces of manila on which I would scribble articles on happenings around those schools that I've mentioned that I went to. A lot of it punctuated with gossip. I would go sourcing for hard copy pictures or photographs, and I would pin these into beautiful magazines and put them on the school notice board. Whenever I would put out an edition, the notice board would be crowded as hordes of students consumed my newspapers. It gave me a lot of satisfaction. On many occasions, I would actually go for days without sleep as I prepared these one-man newspapers. In my mind, I was already a journalist in the making. Then came the decisive moment, sitting for my A-level exams. And of course, naturally, when I was given the forms to fill for what course I wanted to study at university, I put mass communication. I got 20 points at A-level with a super A in literature and English. However, that was the time when mass communication was such a competitive course. I missed out on a government bursary. Instead, the government offered me a Bachelor of Education, Literature and English, and English Language Studies at Makerere University. I took up that course, one, because, well, my mother could not afford to pay for me privately. to study mass communication, but also it was my second love, because it is what my mother had been doing all her life. So, you want to call this perhaps a setback. For another person, this would have been the end of a dream. But for me, I just consider this a deferred dream. When I got to university, I quickly offered myself as the Hall Secretary for Information. I took up an editing role in the university newspaper called the Makererian. I also noticed that if I was going to make an impact, it was about time I began sending articles to the national newspapers. So in the 3 years I spent at university, I got many of my opinions published in the New Vision newspaper and in the Daily Monitor newspaper. Oh, and by the way, just to let you know, I actually took my education degree very seriously. I emerged top of my class of 1,500 students. And indeed, as a trained teacher, I went on to teach after university. However, my dream to become a journalist continued to linger. So there's clarity of dream. It is obvious that that was my dream. So where does opportunity come? One day, I was flipping through the New Vision newspaper. I saw an advert calling for applications for a position of a sub-editor. Now, sub-editors are basically the people who put together the newspaper that you consume in its final form as you see it, as you buy it off the streets or the vendors. Their work is to write headlines. They edit stories to fit into the space. These are stories that have been collected by reporters in the field. They file back, and I can tell you many times those stories are really terrible. So there are people who sit inside there in the newspaper whose work is to make sense of all this stuff that has been collected, fit it onto a newspaper, put pictures, write headlines, write captions. It is such a thankless job. Those people are called sub-editors. They work behind the curtains and they only get recognized when they make mistakes. So when there's a bad headline, that's when they'll ask who did that page. But when there's no problem, no one gives you credit. Anyway, here was the catch. That job call that I saw in the newspaper, here were the conditions. They wanted a graduate of mass communication with 3 years experience. Remember, I didn't have a mass communication degree, and I did not have the 3 years experience as a journalist. But like they say, fate favors the bold. I decided to lodge in an application. Remember, it was just a single slot. There was only one vacancy that had been advertised. A few weeks later, the newspaper reached out to me and told me I had been shortlisted, together with 29 other people, to sit a written interview. The questions were largely on contemporary affairs then. I asked that interview coming number 1 on the list of 30. We were then whittled down to just 10 candidates for an oral interview. Of the 10 who had been invited for now the oral interview, all the other 9 had mass communication degrees. I was the only odd man out. And that was the first question the panel put to me when I walked into the interview room. Why have you applied for this job yet you don't meet the criteria? Of course, I jokingly told them, I actually asked them why they had invited me for the oral interview if I didn't meet the criteria. Jokes aside, I made a passionate case for myself. I told them for what I lacked in the academic documents, I made up in passion. I might have a degree in education, but I've always been a journalist at heart. I took them down my journalism path from high school, told them about the sleepless nights I'd spent editing school magazines, recounted my experience editing the university newspaper. I shared with them articles that I had been sending to the newspapers when I was at university, including those that I had sent to the New Vision. I had cut all of them out and made a file, and I showed them. I reminded them that most of these had been published without even touching a comma or a full stop. I told them I was the person they needed for that job. Ladies and gentlemen, I beat the 9 mass comm degree holders and I was given the job. So that is how my formal journalism career kicked off. The latter part of it is boring, and so I don't want to tire you with it. That was the most exciting part of it. But just to let you know, I got the job and I worked hard. I quickly gained a reputation in a small industry, media industry of Uganda, that I was among the best sub-editors. A few years down the road, the Daily Monitor came knocking and poached me from the New Vision. I went there, grew through the ranks, and I became a managing editor. A managing editor is basically now the overall editor of the newspaper. I then left the Monitor after several years, went back to the New Vision briefly. Then I got spotted by His Excellency the President, who offered me a job to manage his communications, working with him for 6 years as his senior press secretary and spokesperson. Roughly 4 years ago, coming to 5, I returned to the New Vision, where my story had begun. But this time, not as a sub-editor, but as a chief executive officer. We therefore want to ask the question, how did I bridge the gap between dream and opportunity? From my life story that I've shared with you, and by the way, you're one of the first audiences I've shared this story with. I don't usually koyogera konyo neda. But I thought it was important to share with you here this afternoon. So I guess you can answer that quickly. One, I had a dream, and I've made it clear to you that I had a dream. It is a pity that some of you might be here, but you've never had a dream. Even when you go to sleep, you just sleep. And you wake up in the morning, breakfast, and you move on. It can't be that way. Ladies and gentlemen, you must have a dream. You want to be a doctor, you want to be an engineer, you want to be a journalist, a teacher, a nurse, a pilot, you want to be a professional footballer. Nowadays, those make much more money than even what the white-collar people do. But you must have a dream. Number 2, just don't have a dream, nurture it. It is not simply enough to dream. From the earliest opportunity, try to practice what that dream is. If you think you want to be an engineer, at least begin by learning how to fix a car tire. You can then go to a gadget like maybe a phone, try to disassemble it, see if you can reassemble it. It begins to give you the practical skills. You want to be a professional footballer and you've never stepped in the pitch. How is that possible? So begin to nurture that dream. Begin to experiment. That's what I did when I was at school, editing those newspapers, small school magazines. I was nurturing a dream. Kindly note, number 3, that it is never going to be easy sailing. There are going to be obstacles and setbacks, but you must keep soldiering if you want to achieve that dream. When I missed the government bursary to go and study mass communication at university, it was possible that at that point I could have said, to hell, let me go and do other things. So you must know that in pursuit of a dream, you're always going to have obstacles in your way. They should never kill your dream. Number 4, be on the lookout for opportunities. Like they say, luck favors those who are prepared. That is what happened. I was in class teaching, but I still kept looking out for journalism opportunities. And when that single window opened, I went for it. Some people say, you have only one shot at life, so make it a hit. I want to just say that life won't offer you many chances. So when that one opportunity comes, kindly make sure that you're ready and prepared. That is how I was able to take a job meant for mass comm graduates, 3 years experience. I didn't have it, but I was able to take that job. And when finally you get the job or get that opportunity, please make sure that you apply yourself to the maximum. I've told you as a sub-editor, we generally at that point would work on about 4 pages a day. But because I wanted to go the extra mile, I would do an extra shift. So where my friends would edit 4 pages, I would do 6 or 8. When I had a friend or colleague who could not come to work, it was always me who would stand in for them. I was never complaining. For me, it was a learning process. It was about gaining experience. I always shadowed my seniors to get to know how I could get better and improve at my job, learning the craft from them. And that is how a computer newspaper got to know about my abilities and came to fish me. Let me tell you an interesting story. I didn't want to get into this. So when I was working at the New Vision, someone called me and told me, my name is so-so, I'm the head of human resources at the Daily Monitor. We've heard that you're a very good sub-editor and want to offer you an opportunity. And she told me, oh, we know you're earning so much money. We're going to give you 3 times that money you're earning. And also we're going to give you a mid-level managerial job. Remember, as a sub-editor, I was basically the lowest cadre. So here was an opportunity giving me 3 times my salary and also giving me a chance to grow as a manager. It was a tough decision. The New Vision had opened its doors to me, given me an opportunity to learn, to become a journalist. Oh, by the way, later I went to university and actually studied journalism, I should let you know. So, I walked to my supervisor and I told him, I've received a phone call from the Monitor. They want to give me a mid-level job and they're paying me 3 times the money. Is it possible to have a bottle of water, if you don't mind? Pamela? Sorry, this morning we went for a run. There's a hospital called Cure Children's Hospital. We went for a run this morning. Partly why I'm sweating a lot is there's a hospital that offers surgeries for children with a condition called hydrocephalus. You know, children who fluids grow in their heads. So they offer very affordable surgeries and they help children who don't have means. So every year we do a run to raise money. This morning we raised 500 million shillings out of that run. I've not been practicing a lot, so my body was not in the best shape, but I ran 5 kilometers in 35 minutes. I'm sure many of you can't do that. So when I walk to my supervisor, I tell him, this is what has happened. So my supervisor, because they didn't want to lose me, quickly takes me to our human resource manager and tells the HR person, we cannot lose Don. These people are offering him 3 times the money. Let's offer him that 3 times and top it up so that he stays. I was now caught in a dilemma. My current employer was now increasing my salary beyond what the other person was offering me. But there was one thing the employer was not offering me at that time, which was basically, I was going to stay at the same level that I was at. And they told me, take some days and think about it. So I went and thought about it. I consulted a bit of friends here and there. And the conclusion was that I would leave my current employer because the other person who was prospecting was giving me an opportunity to grow in terms of career. So I painfully left the New Vision and I went to the Monitor. But like I said, the rest is history. So that is it. When you do your work well, when you excel, when you go beyond the normal call of duty, when others are just putting in the normal, and for you go the extra shift, someone is going to take note. Now, I know that Brighter Monday has done a very good job of giving you important tips. for getting yourself ready for the job market. They have taught you how to write very beautiful CVs. They have prepped you on how to make an impression during interviews, how to grow and exert your soft skills. They have shared with you tools on how to search for jobs and much, much more. You have been told about artificial intelligence and its impact on the employment world. That is why I decided I was not going to follow what the MC Clinton was saying, because I know for these past days, yesterday and today, this is what everyone has been telling you. And that's why I decided that instead I would speak to you about my life story. So you have been well schooled, but I want to remind you that a good CV is just not about form. You ask yourself today, if you were to write a CV, would it go beyond one page? If they told you list all the things you have done since you were a baby, would they go beyond one page? How many people have accomplishments that would go beyond a page? I imagine the others, maybe you go half a page. Eh? What I'm saying is that a good CV is not about form, it's about substance. So ask yourself today, if I was to write my CV, I'm a third-year education student, I'm a third-year nursing student, I'm a second-year journalism student. What have you done? Assuming your managers, your university leadership here tomorrow say, we want to recruit some students, give them some work, but please present a CV. What would be on your CV? And by the CVs, you don't have to wait to leave university to begin. I have told you that I went for a job interview and I presented evidence of things I've done in senior 1, senior 2, senior 3, and told them I've been doing this, and it was documented. So kindly, even when you are at that level, you should be able to have a CV of substance. When you are invited to an interview, you don't just come to the interview. It means you've exhibited what the interviewers want. That's why I'm asking, if the university today advertised for a junior position here and said, let's give the opportunity to our students who are at campus, IUIU, would you actually make it to the interview? So what I'm emphasizing is that it's not enough to beautify the outside of a container. Please put some content in that container. And that container is you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to end with a tale. The panel that I found summarizing was discussing, I think, inclusivity at the workplace and issues of sexual harassment and things like that. I have now been in the employment world for slightly over 20 years. I have seen dreams meet opportunity and thrive.